Temple, and we're going to find out about which one of those football clubs wants to hit each other harder and longer.
Oh my, is he okay?
He's fired up, man. Reminds me of the speeches you used to give, Coach.
Yeah, it was very similar to that. Maybe he didn't know the microphones were on. So he didn't have to yell.
We got it.
Frothing at the
Because
mouth.
the microphone, it enhances.
This is an interim coach. Maybe auditioning for the head coaching job. Got a big game against a better than we thought Duke team. I like it.
Big Independence Bowl.
Of course you would. The players are laughing.
He wasn't talking to the players there.
The players see it, though.
That's fair. That's fair.
All right, let's talk to the Cowboys quickly. Cowboys are the hottest team in the NFL right now, riding a 5-game win streak, but just a few weeks ago, not hot. They were 3-5 with rumors swirling about firing their coach and making a quarterback change this offseason. Jerry Jones says this team is motivated by those early season struggles. Take a listen.
When you've had the downs or when you've had the type season we have, it's almost like in life, growing up without any money or growing up in lesser circumstances. Once you've tasted that feeling, it makes you appreciate and makes you not want to go back there. And this team, fortunately, has had real challenges early this year. We have lived to tell about it.
All right, Coach, how have the Cowboys grown since the struggles we saw them having earlier on in the season?
Well, there is some value in going through adversity early in the season and being able to come out of it on the other side, and it builds a trust. It builds a level of trust between the players. It builds a level of trust between the players and the coaches and the organization, and that can go a long way as you move throughout the course of the season. There's been certain areas where I think that you see it more than others, like last game. The tight ends were targeted 11 times, and they were 11 for 11. And as much as they were talking about Jason Witten coming back and all those things, the idea of incorporating the tight ends back into the passing game, even if it's not explosive
I don't think Witten can come back, though, because, or he had to get a different helmet, because he got a lot more hair on his head now than he had when he was playing. But go ahead, Coach.
Yeah, I'm sure they could work out the helmet aspect, but the idea of incorporating the tight ends into the attack, I think, is a great thing. Joe Looney, the center. Joe was my bus mate in San Francisco, so we sat next to each other all the time. And like a great guy, this is the most games that he's started in the course of his career, and he's done a really outstanding job in a very difficult situation. And things like that take time. Transitions like that take time. Building Amari Cooper into the offense, understanding how he fits and how best to use him. Dak understanding that he doesn't need to press all the time, that sometimes it's just going to be a function of taking what's there, and it's a learning process, and they've seemed to take some real steps over the course of especially the last month.
Yeah, they have made some real steps, and Coach pointed out the trust factor. Not only did they trade their offensive line coach out, hiring Mark Colombo, former player, so this offseason they changed 7 coaches. Now they've changed the offensive line coach. So you're talking about 8 structural changes to the team. This offseason, their plan was to be more explosive. Their plan was to have the tight ends involved. But you go through training camp, you go through the preseason, and sometimes you don't get it right. They didn't have it right. They didn't believe they had the right personnel. That's why you go and make a trade for Amari Cooper. As Coach mentioned, though, you start to begin to trust when you have success. And Sanjay Lau, in talking to him last week, and Coach, thank you, gave me a heads up as far as what type of teacher he was and everything. Right now, he's trying to change their whole identity of a passing attack. He wants the tight ends to be more involved. So you can see they'll be incorporated more as we go through these last 3 games. And watch from Michael Gallup and Amari Cooper for their deep passing game, because they know Zeke's going to touch the ball. Last week, 40 times he touched the ball, but they want a vertical passing game with that running attack. So you can see late in that game where they throw the ball against Philadelphia, threw the ball down the football field. So they're trying to develop that passing game, that trust. That's got to be better. And in talking to him this week about what in looking at the film from last week's game, he told me they left about 75 to 100 yards of passing offense on the field. So they're looking forward to playing this week against a underrated Colts defense and seeing if they can grow that passing game.
A lot of that yardage was to Michael Gallup on two distinct overthrows where it looked like Gallup had won one of them, ran a double move, left his guy, and Dak just overshot him. But this team early in the year, aside from Zeke, was incredibly slow offensively. The only guy that added any type of speed threat was Tavon Austin, who made two big plays in the first 6 weeks of the season, and he's been out since then with a hamstring injury. He might actually be back this week. Michael Gallup, who's a third-round pick, obviously early in the year, he's not totally familiar and comfortable with what they're doing. He now is more comfortable, and as you've talked about, they bring in Amari Cooper. So now we're looking at the Cowboys going into Week 15. Tavon Austin might be there as a bit player. Michael Gallup has established what his actual role is, and we know what Amari Cooper is. Now that's a team that might actually have from bottom of the league speed to above average speed. You pair that with Zeke, who's in as good of a 4-game stretch, 5-game stretch that he's ever had in his career during this winning streak, averaging 30 touches per game, 170 yards from scrimmage per game. You start to see an offense that can pair very well with what is, I believe, one of the unquestioned 5 best defenses in football. That's where they're checking every box as far as improving from where they were. Now, the passing game, I thought was really questionable the first 3 quarters of the game against Philly, and I thought it was questionable in the game against New Orleans. But maybe they unlock something in that fourth quarter, because in the fourth quarter and overtime, the passing game was the best we'd seen since the playoff game against Green Bay a year and a half ago. So every phase of the team right now is playing its best football.
And when you look at the early part of our discussions, it was always Zeke, Zeke, Zeke. And the fact that we can talk about somebody different, to me, that's a huge step, that there is a second threat to this, that they are making defenses defend the whole field, that they are taking advantage of some of the coverages that are being designed to stop Zeke, and that they can take advantage of those things. To me, that's a big part of this. And losing and winning, those things are learned, and sometimes they can be self-fulfilling prophecies. You can get into a rut where you almost feel like you're going to lose the game, and you can get into the other side where you think and believe that you're going to find a way to win the game, and Dallas seems to be much more on that edge.
I'm a little more skeptical than Nick is as far as what Dak is going to do, just because, like we talked about, such a small sample size, quarter of football.
I don't know that
where you say they unlocked everything.
I said maybe they unlocked everything.
Maybe.
I'm not. I want to be clear. I'm not confident that Dak all of a sudden is going to be the guy he was in the fourth quarter. I'm simply saying if you're the Cowboys, you have the most recent history you have in every phase of your game. Coaching, offense, defense, running game, passing game are all positive and all some of the best you have seen all year.
How do you feel about Dak Prescott from what you saw the whole game, not just in that fourth quarter? I mean, do you move into next week trusting him a little more?
Well, you're encouraged that he has shown that. And that's one of the things, and like I think that's what Nick is getting at, is at least we've seen that potential in him where you really hadn't seen the explosiveness up until that point. Is it going to be a consistent thing to expect? I'm not sold on that.
Yeah, I think we should be careful in trying to evaluate Dak. Or we said we couldn't evaluate him as a quarterback until he got an elite wide receiver. He's been playing 6 weeks with Amari Cooper. Amari Cooper, since that time, leads the NFL in yardage and in touchdown. Dak's got a hell of a lot better. These last 3 games, I believe that we'll see the continuance of what we saw in the fourth quarter. Just because you struggle a quarter or half, we see Drew Brees struggle. We see all the quarterbacks. Ben Roethlisberger struggle. But now, because he's a young quarterback, if they struggle and then they get it together at the end, we put them under some different type of scrutiny. I believe, based on talking to them and what they're going to try to do, their passing game will be improved coming down the stretch.
And I've been highly critical of Dak, but where I want to be fair is what I know for a fact is this. If in the first 3 quarters of the game he was awesome, and then in the fourth quarter was terrible and they lost, we would be totally throw out the first 3 quarters and be killing him. So, like, typically with quarterbacks, how you do in the beginning of a football game gets disregarded if at the end of a football game you play at a level that makes your team win or makes your team lose. Like, that's what we've done. One of Brady's best games all year was that Packers game where he was wholly ineffective for 3 quarters, and then the fourth quarter was perfect. We gave him tremendous credit for that. So even though I've been critical of Dak, I want to be fair and be consistent with that evaluation.
And you're right. I do grade much higher or much more on a curve in the fourth quarter, because that's when you have the most information and it's the highest level of pressure. And that to me defines quarterbacks.
Coach, thanks for hanging out today.
All right.
Have a great rest of the week.
Thanks.
We got to take a
Look
break.
at me, Coach.
Is KD right that
Look at
Kobe
me.
is one of the 2 best players ever? That's next on First Things First. Now look at me.
Okay, we're going to talk about sex.
That's baby. It's good.
What?
You forced
It's a
that.
very, very
You
popular
forced
My fault.
song.
It's my fault.
What
Luis?
Stephanie, hola.
Opportunity is everywhere. Like here, where you can explore the world, knowing you can always find your way home.
The new Roomba i7 Plus is your floor's best friend. Only Roomba uses 2 multi-surface rubber brushes to grab and remove pet hair. And the Roomba filter captures 99% of dog and cat allergens. If it's not for my robot,